Okay, so in this question we are asked to write a program that produces a Sumac sequence. So a Sumac sequence starts with two integers, so the first one being larger than the second one, right? And then it produces its next term based on the difference between the previous two numbers in the sequence, right? And it will stop when the next term it produces is larger than the previous one. Okay, so if we look at kind of the examples here, so if I'm starting at 95 and 56, 39 is the difference between 95 and 56. Okay, 17 is the difference between 56 and 39. 22 is the difference between 39 and 17, but it stops because this number here is now bigger than its previous term. Okay. And it shows a couple more examples that we can use to test things out here. All right, so let's start thinking about how we might go ahead and solve this problem. So let's just take a look at a sequence here to see if we can kind of plan out some variables. So if I'm taking, I'll just say take 120 and say 90 as my first two values. So maybe we're going to call those A and B. So those are the inputs from the keyboard. I'm not going to worry about which one is bigger. I know that A is going to be entered bigger than B, so I'm not going to code that, but we'll just assume that the user is going to do it properly. Okay, so now the next term in my sequence, right, so this is kind of the first iteration of my sequence. Is going to be next iteration is going to be 120, 90, and then 30 will be the result here. So maybe this will be my C variable, okay, which is A minus B. Okay, and then the next iteration of the sequence, right, will be 60. Right, which is, again, so I guess what would happen here is as soon as I did this, then my 90 and 30 would have to, my A and B variables would have to switch, right? So A and B would become 90 and 30, and then this one would still be my C value, which is going to be A minus B. So C is always going to be A minus B, but I need to swap A and B every iteration. Okay. So how am I going to do this? Well, I think I need some type of infinite loop. Right. Okay. Where this really isn't an iteration of the loop because it's kind of starting out ahead of time. I'm not doing any calculations. So maybe ahead of this infinite loop, I'll print A and B to start, and then my loop. Okay, what we can do is in the loop we can say C equals A minus B. Okay, and then we can print C, and then what has to happen is after I've calculated C, then I can say A equals B and B equals C, okay? Because B is equal to the old C, and this is equal to the old B when we were doing it. Okay, so this would print the sequence forever. It won't stop. It'll just start going into negative values. So we will have to stop it. But maybe we can see whether that actually kind of produces what we want here first, and then we can go ahead and put our if statement in afterwards. So we can go to the IDE. So let's get the inputs first. So we'll get A. That's our first value. first. Okay, b is our second value. And let's print the first values of the sequence and make sure the cursor stays on the same line for the next value. Okay, now I know I'm going to need an infinite loop here. I maybe just want to do a, let's print out a few values, because if I get an infinite loop, it's going to go crazy on my program. So I'm going to just make a while loop. So let's say count equals 0 while count is less than, let's say, let's print out 10 values here. Okay, and I'll change that to an infinite loop after I know it's working properly. Okay? An infinite loop without a stop is probably a bad idea to run for testing. Okay, so what I needed to do is I needed to calculate C, which was A minus B, and then print C on the same line. And then my new A value will be the old B value, and my new B value will be the old C value. Okay. And let's see what this does. Okay, so let's say my first was 120 and my next was 90. Okay. So is it doing things correctly? Well, let's see. So 120, 90, subtract gives us 30. 90 minus 30 is 60. Subtract 30 minus 60 is negative 30. Subtract 60 minus negative 30 is 90. Negative 30 minus 90 is minus 120. Okay, so this is producing the sequence correctly. We just need it to now stop once once this value here is bigger than that value there. And that's not all that hard. We just need a if statement that says, like, if C is bigger than B, then break the program. Otherwise, do these calculations, right? So if C is bigger than B, we will break. Otherwise, do these. Okay, and this should work for this particular sequence less than 10. That's because there's less than 10 elements in the sequence, and then I'll change it to the infinite loop later. So 120 and 90. Okay, so that's stopping correctly. All right, so now I should be able to get rid of all of this. Okay, and see if that works as well. Okay, so that's a good test on that sequence. Let's go back to the inputs here. So 9556. Okay, and that is the correct sequence for that it was showing in the input. Maybe let's test one more. We'll try the 750 and 425. Okay, and that is also working correctly as expected. Okay, so it's a pretty simple piece of code, but as long as we kind of thought about it ahead of time. Okay, so we're still doing our input, processing, output, and we are just trying to learn how to write the program in smaller pieces so that it becomes easier to test and debug.